Hi and welcome to Razz Reviews. Today I'm going to be reviewing Ad Astra. So this movie is basically a science fiction flick starring Brad Pitt and directed by some guy called James Gray, who's really relatively an unknown. And it follows the story of a space astronaut called Roy. And it's set in the near future when space travel has become a normal commercial thing. And the story focuses on our main character trying to find his long-lost father, who's also an astronaut and has traveled far away. And he's not sure if he's even dead or alive, but he's on a mission to go find him. The thing about this movie is that I went to see it completely blank. I didn't see any trailers, I didn't read any reviews, nothing. I had no idea what it's about. I just saw a poster. That's why I'm like, oh, it's Brad Pitt in space. Having watched Ad Astra, I am intrigued by it, and I thought it was a pretty decent film. However, it wasn't great. It fails short when it comes to the great sci-fi epics that we've been seeing recently, like Interstellar and Gravity and even First Man. This movie doesn't really live up to those films, and it's a little bit weaker. The first half of the film is actually fantastic, so it's a great half of a film. But then the second half is really where it falters and it suffers from a lot of weak points. One of the things that really work in the film and one of its strongest points is the cinematography. This movie is visually beautiful. And that's the thing that we've come to expect from films like this. I believe the cinematographer of this film is the same one who did Interstellar, so you can expect these big, epic, beautiful wide shots of space and planets, and it was just breathtaking, really. It was grainy, it looked like it was shot on film, and it felt a lot of times like a visual homage to 2001 Space Odyssey. The soundtrack for this film is also pretty great, and it reminds me of those big, epic, overwhelming soundtracks that you find in films like that. So you should know by now, as a rule of thumb, if I'm talking a lot about technical and visual stuff, that means I'm not a big fan of the script and the story or the directing. And that's the thing with this movie. I like the idea and the concepts that are in it, and thematically it's also very powerful, and the character story is very nice. However, the execution of it doesn't really land. The first half of the film is actually very intriguing. I really like how they painted a picture of the near future. We get to see what the world will look like in the future if space travel becomes a thing that we all do. But then once we hit the midpoint and we start going further down the story, that's where things stop working. The big two problems that I have with this film, A, it's so slow. It's not a slow burn, it's just slow. There's these long bloated scenes that feel longer than they need to be and you don't know why. And it just feels really boring and you lose interest, and of course you lose the emotional connection. The other thing is that it's a bummer. The second half of this film is so depressing, which again leaves you feeling a little bit empty and dejected. It's just so depressing and long and dreary. That's the word. That's what it feels like. It's dreary. So at the end of the day, it's not an enjoyable experience. And in terms of storyline and plot, there's not enough stuff happening in the second act to sustain the second and the third act, like at all. I feel like this film should have been 1 hour, 10 minutes long, which is similar to what Gravity did. Gravity did a really amazing job at making the story concise, because at the end of the day there's a lot of solitude in space and we're focusing on one character for a very long time. And in Gravity, I think Alfonso Cuarón understood that you can't do that for 2 hours. I can't stare at somebody for 2 hours unless a lot of stuff is happening. The movie tries to fill in this space, get it? The space. The movie tries to fill in the space in between things happening with a lot of voiceover to give us a lot of exposition. And some people might find that lazy. I don't have a problem with voiceover if it's working. It didn't bother me in this film, but sometimes, especially when nothing was happening, it did get a little repetitive and it did get a little annoying. I liked it in the beginning because it was giving me insight to the character, which I thought was important. But towards the end, it was just like a guy talking about random stuff. And it wasn't as entertaining. I don't know if this is true, but I think that the film probably didn't have voiceover, and then the director was probably asked to put voiceover in there because there's just, you know, minutes and minutes and minutes and minutes of Brad Pitt depressed and floating in space. Like, okay, you gotta put something in there, so maybe that's where the voiceover came, just to fill in all that void. What is life? Am I my father? Is my father me? Will I find him? Or will I be free of him? What is love? Baby, don't hurt me no more. did it fill it? Yes, but did it make it more compelling? Not really, not towards the end, so it didn't really work. So you end up just sitting there and just waiting for the movie to be over and waiting for the scenes to be over and waiting for something to happen. And here's the thing, when things do happen, they're pretty cool. But it's just the space between is suffocating. So it was not very enjoyable for me. I thought it was pretty weak. And that's the big thing about it, is that once you leave it, this movie does not hit you where it's supposed to. It doesn't make you feel anything. It suggests a lot of interesting philosophical questions about existence, about life, about the world. And any space travel odyssey film usually does that, because the world is so big and we are so small, and what does it mean and who are we? These are great thoughts, but I don't want to be depressed and I don't want to be bored. So it didn't really deliver on many of the things that it set up in the beginning. There wasn't a lot of payoff in the end. It was just drawn out unnecessarily, made the film feel bloated and slow and boring and dull. And that's why I was not a big fan of Ad Astra. I wish I enjoyed it more. I think it had some really interesting things and sequences. It looked beautiful, and it was an intriguing film, and it suggested really interesting thoughts and philosophical questions, but the execution of it was weak. It's half of a great film, but a total bummer. So I'm going to give Ad Astra a 6.5 out of 10. So, have you seen Ad Astra? If you have, what did you think about it? Are you depressed? And also let me know, what are your rankings for your favorite sci-fi films of recent years? Put it in the comment section, and as always, like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to ask me what you'd like me to review for your next. See ya!